Hello.
Hello, gatherers.
How's everybody doing?
Welcome to the gathering room with Martha Beck.
With Rowan Minger.
That's me.
Yes.
I'm that one. You're the other one.
The gracious badger. We decided in Africa that animals know what they are because of a feeling. And the feeling is best expressed in this phrase.
So, all right. So I think that animals don't know what they are. They look at each other, then they see I'm a warthog. That other guy's a warthog. I'm that kind of guy. They see I'm that kind of guy.
I see a giraffe. I'm my kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy.
No, I'm that kind of guy, not that kind of guy.
I wouldn't be. Okay, so hello everybody. Karen and Lucy, Vanessa and Sandy. Oh, we should make poems out of their names.
I have to say, Kathy Kozak was first in.
She was. Boom, Kathy Kozak. Coming on strong from Hawaii.
Hi, Cindy. Hi, Aletta.
And Joe and Tracy and Mustafa.
Hi, Face. Hi, Cam.
Hi, Barb.
So many
friends.
And
Beck. I know, this is so great. I can't get over it.
And hello, all you gorgeous people in the UK and in Western Europe who can join us now.
Gosh, we love you. We love you so much.
Hi.
We were there. I just wrote a thing about flying from London to Philadelphia. It was a very, very moving experience for me. And you can read about it in Maria Shriver's Sunday paper some Sunday, maybe next Sunday. I don't know, but it's worth reading Maria's Sunday paper anyway. It's a really good online magazine and you should all read it if you want to be happier.
So many lovelies.
Look at all these people.
You lovelies. We've got Kentucky here. Hi, Tracy. We've got Michigan here. We've got Lillehammer, and that's always.
Oh my gosh. Ever since the Olympics, right? It just looms in the imagination of the world. We have 117 people.
Oh my God, what am I even doing here anymore? I am so sorry. Everyone wants to remember the future. I can remember the future where I get out of the way.
Yeah.
Got out of the way. Will got out of the way.
Will have gotten out of the way.
I will have gotten out of the way very soon.
Yeah, you have to speak very complex sentences. I remember the future where I will have gotten out of the way. So yes, we were in New York City the other day, and Ro kept saying, I didn't grow up thinking about New York City. Grew up in a place called Australia, which I think is probably fictional, because she's just always talking about these strange creatures that hop about with babies in their pockets. Doesn't sound real. Anyway, no offense to the Aussies. Anyway, we were in New York City, and she said, I keep having weird responses to specific places. I'm having bursts of happiness and delight in response to places that have no particular significance to me whatsoever. And I said, aha, I know what is happening to you. You are remembering future events that will happen in those places. And here is how I justify this. First of all, I have had numerous experiences of remembering the future. You may have had them too. I think I wrote about once when I was 15, 16. I grew up without a television, and my family had recently acquired a secondhand television from a hotel that was like one of those things where you had to stand and hold one of the metal antennae and then stick your leg out the window and keep your head wet to get reception. But I was sitting in front of it drawing, and it was a very bad screen. But suddenly it went really clear, and the sound went really clear, and it said, and I looked up because it had suddenly gone clear, and I saw a runner on a track, an indoor track. And absolutely clearly, I remembered that's where I go to college. And then in the next, half second, the voice from the television said, here at Harvard's Gordon indoor track, I think it was the Gordon track. And I was like, Harvard? And I go, whoever thought about going to Harvard? That's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life. But I was still kind of transfixed, had my leg out the window, got my head wet. And that was part of the reason that I ended up, a Mormon girl from a public high school in Utah applying to Harvard at all. And then I did get in. So there you go. So things like that began to happen when I was quite young. And it took a while before I realized that they happened regularly. And now they happen quite a lot. And when I was in my 20s, I started trying to figure out how this was happening, because I have to know. I can't just take something on faith. I want to know how it works. But then I got to the point where I could basically understand why at the speed of light there is no time. Because if you were a photon bouncing off a clock, zipping around the universe, you would always show the image of the clock in the same position, right? It would always be the same time if you were traveling at the same distance away from the clock as a photon would. That's a little analogy that Einstein once used to describe it. It's not a fact, but it gives you the idea. Anyway, it is true. It is true physics that when you reach the velocity of light, there is no time. It's also true that physics really doesn't know what consciousness is, what's it made of, what functions. We know what functions it has, for one thing. It determines where clouds of probability will condense into matter, but we don't know what it is, what its essence is. However, you could reasonably assume that whatever it is, it might travel at the speed of light, consciousness. In which case, for consciousness, or at least an aspect of consciousness, as well as for light, there would be no time, and we would be in eternity and in all times of the present. So what if there's an aspect of consciousness that is outside of time, and as we go from place to place and we go into a certain place, we experience what has happened in that place with our consciousness, with the consciousness that has always been in that place, both our own individual consciousness and the other fragments of consciousness that have gone through it, whether human or animal or even inanimate, like forests or something. So you may have had the experience of going to a place where an atrocity happened and feeling the tension in the air. I've actually never been to Jerusalem, but a lot of people have told me that when they get off the plane in Jerusalem, the air is absolutely thick with everything that has happened in that place. There's been so much of deep historical, philosophical, religious meaning, and there's been so much conflict, so much strife, so much war. And I've been told many times by many people that you can feel that in the air. When I did finally go to Harvard physically and walked onto the campus, I swear I could feel the thinking of all the minds that had passed through that physical space. And now, as I look back on where I went, as I got to know the campus, I realized that as I walked through certain places, I was experiencing bits of happiness, sadness, fear, and so on that would later be explained by what happened to me in those places. So probably, I think everybody has a little bit of this. We have a word for it, prescience. So to know beforehand. It's not quite deja vu. Deja vu is, I've already been here, this has already happened. But it's similar. It's a sense of memory, but it's for the future. One of my clients called it premembering, and I've always loved her description of it. So as we walked around New York, we talked about ways that we could enhance our ability to premember our futures. And I thought it might be interesting to you people to try premembering your own futures. So the first thing you have to do is to go to the place that is outside of time. You have to go to the part of your consciousness that's not locked in time. So what is the part of your consciousness that isn't locked in time? Well, for the purposes of the human animal, the human mind, the only access point is now. So if you get deeply into the now, like deeply, deeply into the now, as Byron Katie says, even the present is now in the past. Oop, it just left, right? As I say it, it's over. So to be truly in the now is to be on this needle point of emerging and passing away, where actually, if you got deeply, deeply focused on the present moment alone, if you've done, followed Eckhart Tolle's meditations or whatever he uses it, if you go deeply into the now, time starts to stretch out and feel malleable, and moments can seem to last a long, long time, and you can sit for hours and it goes by almost instantaneously, and you start to feel the malleability of time. Einstein also said, when asked to describe relativity, that it's what makes an hour with a beautiful woman feel like a minute, and a minute with an angry, nasty person feel like an hour. He didn't say exactly that, but something like that. But going to the part of your consciousness that exists outside of time involves very, very intensely focusing on the now. So if your mind even slightly is remembering what just happened or thinking about what is about to happen, you'll lose it. That's not a problem. All thoughts exist in the stream of time. So you will have thoughts that come out bloop, and for a moment they're now, but all they are is just these passing phenomena. And if you don't follow them, you won't get trapped in the stream of time. You just watch. So there goes a thought bloop. And you can give it a word like fearing, it's always going to be the future, or sadness, that's always going to be the past, and projections of future times when you will be sad about what you've lost in the past. Or just thinking like, there's a bird. That's just a thought. So if you follow it, I wonder what kind of bird, I wonder what sound it makes, then you're lost in the stream of time. But if it's just bird, and then the thought is labeling, you can start to use language to let the thoughts pass and not get stuck on them, but stay in now. And it's almost like drilling in. And I tried it this morning while I was meditating so I could talk to you guys about it. And it was so strange. At first, I was all over the place. And after about half an hour, I was just like, oh, right. Okay. I forgot it feels this good. It's very sweet to be out of the stream of time. The stream of time is not natural for us. Remembering our future is natural, and being outside of time is natural. So the second thing that you can do once you access the part of you that's outside of consciousness is allow joy, allow peace, allow positive states of emotion to arise, and you can go deeper into them. So you don't fixate on them as, oh, something's going to make me happy, or something made me happy in the past. It's just now, 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 now. Peace in the now, joy in the now, bliss in the now. Start giving yourself words like that go in. And then just put an order out. Picture, please. Picture, picture. I just say picture because I tend to remember the future in pictures. That first thing on the TV was a scene, and then the words came afterward. So you go into the present and then into peace, joy, bliss, any other state, but make sure it's not a manic state, like frenzy. It has to be deep, quiet, still, peace. And then you go, picture. And then you just wait. Picture, picture. And you'll get these. And if they come with a burst of joy, like the one that Ro was feeling walking around New York City, to me, what I've found is that is a true memory of the future. And I don't know how, if I learn how, I will tell you how to get more specific about exactly what to see. I don't know how to get it to tell me things like, will this thing happen to me, this thing I really want? Will Adam find a girlfriend or whatever? Never answers that. But if I just go into the now, into the bliss, and then picture, boom, things come up. And then the fun thing now is you walk around taking pictures with your cell phone. And I took a picture of Ro and Stephen Mitchell, Byron Katie's husband, in the West Village with pride stuff, like insanely packed rainbows all around us. Every place, every person, every dog was dressed in rainbows. And I took a picture and I thought, this is like a fever dream. If I'd had it when I was 20, and then if you told me this picture will one day be real, I would have shot myself. But at the same time, I was reading Stephen Mitchell. I was writing things that later turned out to be in poems that Ro had written in that fictional place called Australia. Part of me was already painting pictures of that future before I could actually see it. So the little pictures that I see now, I'll share them with you later if they come true, and I can be sure. But just try it, write it down in your journal, and then wait a couple years. You're going to see some interesting things about your own ability to sense what's coming. So that's the 15-minute mark. And unlike last week, I'm going to stop at 15 minutes like I'm supposed to and take some questions from all you lovely, lovely people. Come on, gracious Badger. Let's do the question thing.
Oh, I remembered coming back here.
It's amazing. Who could have known?
Amazing.
Who
Just
could have
came, like,
guessed?
it was like a picture in my head of me sitting down on this chair.
Yeah. All right.
I have some good questions already. I have a question here from Alexa who says, how do you distinguish seeing the future versus your past fears telling you what will happen in the future? For example, fears of abandonment, the never-ending cycle of predicting the future loss due to past damage.
There will never be a true picture that makes you afraid, sad, or angry, or any variation of those emotions. Truth doesn't feel bad. Truth feels peaceful. Even when it shows you something that your mind is afraid of, the initial impulse that sees the future is peaceful. I believe the reason that we have a screen between ourselves and most future vision is that we would freak the frick out if you showed us pictures of what's going to happen, because our minds would make something out of it that would frighten us. If I'd seen myself when I was growing up a Mormon girl and I'd seen myself in the middle of this pride celebration, I would have been terrified beyond terror, right? It happened in the flow of time so that I could get used to it. I could get used to being gay. I could get used to everything. And I would make rainbow images of my own, although that had nothing to do with gay pride when I painted it. But that, you can know if it comes with fear, anger, sadness, it's not real. That's a fantasy projected by the mind. That's not a vision seen through time.
Cool. Sandy asks, what might the difference be between, say, remembering your future and the law of attraction? So I guess she means trying to make something happen.
Yeah,
and
it's
just seeing it in advance.
It's a great question, Sandy, because I think it's a real chicken egg phenomenon. Because, like, for example, something used to happen to me all the time in Phoenix where I really didn't care. I was living in a desert. I knew it was a desert. I didn't track the weather much. And sometimes we'd get these torrential monsoon rains. But usually it was just dry and incredibly hot. And so I would be sitting around, and every few months I would say, gosh, I really want it to rain. Like, I really want it to rain. Like, I would actually pray to whatever God is, let's have some rain. And the next day or two, it would rain. Now, I had not checked the weather and wasn't tracking the patterns. But what it came to me was it would be so sweet if it rained. I didn't mind that it wasn't raining, but suddenly I wanted the sweetness of that. And I don't know if I was being given the information so that I would help ask for something that wanted to happen and thereby facilitate it, or if I was just remembering something and it had a sweetness surrounding it, or I didn't know if I was helping in the causality of it by wanting it or not.
I love that.
And I think it's circular, because I think the part of us that's outside of time loves what's meant to happen. So it always feels delighted for it to happen. And in our flow of time before it's happened, that feels like longing, wanting, trying to attract. Yeah. But I can't attract things I just choose arbitrarily.
And you can feel the difference. You can feel like if there's, and that's the delicious, right?
Yeah. I was saying to Rope, when I used to try to attract money when I had no money at all, I would just say, I'm going to earn X amount of dollars. And it felt like I was trying to climb a glass building in the winter wearing heavy mittens. It was just, And then when I finally people started teaching me a little bit about how to actually make money. And it felt like a track in my tummy. I remember when this wonderful woman sat me down and showed me how to make money online, just sketched it on a napkin. And I had a feeling in my tummy, like I had just had a delicious, yummy treat. And I went, oh, that's how you do it. And I just, whoop, 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 whoop. And then I started to do it, and it worked. And I kept following that feeling in my tummy. And like now, the feeling in my tummy says, for example, I want to make a podcast. Well, let's make a podcast in addition to the gathering. Let's cast a few pods, my gosh. And I would never charge for, do you even charge for, I don't know how.
We're in the early stages.
I have no idea. I don't intend to charge money for a podcast.
No,
but the yumminess that says, oh yeah, that way good fortune lies, like whoop, 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 whoop. And that actually is the feeling of the future calling me forward in that one particular way. And you start to learn the tracks. It's like tracking animals in Africa. You learn the tracks. You learn the track that money leaves in your bottom, in your body. It leaves a track in my bottom. What can I say? It's my root chakra. I'm not ashamed. I am ashamed. I'm working on it.
Someone tweet that right now. They will show you.
But there's another kind of track that you get when, for example, something wants to be written. And we were talking to Stephen about this. We were saying, we were talking about the feeling of actually reaching for words in the air and actually doing this with our hands. And he says, I don't do that anymore. He said, I just get still and listen. And I said, it sounds like you just go to the place where the words are already waiting. And he said, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And he said, after spending literally weeks at a time in meditation, like 20 hours of meditation a day, 4 hours of sleep, for weeks he did this, many times, multiple times. He said, it's not hard to get to the place where language is waiting after you've sat through that. I'm not going to sit through that. But I'll try to do as well as I can. But words feel different from money, feels different from relationships, feels different from housing. There are all these different tracks. And there's the feeling of trying to climb the building in mittens, like, I want it, versus, ooh. That's the scientific way I have to explain it.
Do that again.
That's how it should be.
Okay. All right. Judith says, in a way, what do you get out of this? It's neat. I enjoy it on occasion. Sometimes it confuses me, but it rarely, if ever, brings insight. Am I missing something?
I think it can bring more than insight. It can bring trust. And trust is actually, there are two fundamental tracks you can choose when you get up into the morning. You can choose the track of fear, where you know that a bunch of good things are going to happen, a bunch of bad things are going to happen. You're going to live through all but one. But you're scared, you're going to die, people you love are going to die. There's a basic fear of the condition of human mortality. The other track is absolute trust that whatever is happening is meant to bring you as a being into spaces of brighter and brighter illumination, into spaces of deeper and deeper love, that everything is not happening to you, but happening for you. And glimpsing the future and then experiencing it can show you that there's something beyond the logical temporal mind that actually is holding the entire timeline of your life. And if it's doing that, then there's something bigger than your mere life. And you have access to that. So you can start to trust that. And the more you notice that it's telling you the truth, the deeper your trust becomes. And after a while, the fear is much easier to abandon. And the trust is much easier to rest in. And that is the difference between a really awful life and a really good one, I think, in my own case.
Love it. So Nadine asks, how can we increase the chances to remember our future? How do we get receptive to this experience?
Well, as I said, now, be in now. But in order to be really present, usually we have to be away from other people. And then, as I said, go to different places and feel the different things that have happened and will happen in those places. So you go to a different place and you get very deeply engrossed in the now. You can't do this unless you had tons of practice. If you're talking to someone, or if you're standing in line, somebody's jostling you, somebody's making demands, you really have to take some time by yourself to settle into that. But go to different places and then get really present and just notice the feeling. I mean, one of the interesting things as we were getting ready to move to Pennsylvania, Ro and Karen were really into Hamilton, the musical Hamilton, and they drove across the country. Adam and I stayed behind, and we flew later. But they drove across the country listening to the musical Hamilton, and singing all the songs. And we actually weren't sure where we were going to end up living. But when we got here and purchased a house, we later found out that the place through which we walk our dogs was the headquarters of Alexander Hamilton during the Revolutionary War. We did not know that. But it was
we're remembering history in our
future. We were remembering history in our future, or maybe by constantly focusing on Hamilton, we were taken to the place where he had been in the past, or maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know. All I can say is there are a hell of a lot of coincidences in my life.
I would say Alexander Hamilton used the law of attraction to bring us hundreds of years later.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
That's what it was.
Probably wrote about it in some undiscovered manuscript.
He wrote a lot. Let's find that.
He wrote everything down.
This is what we know. Elizabeth says, could the childhood harbored future memory and the blissful meditation future memories actually be priming your brain and then creating future manifestations of those primed memories?
That's the question. Which is creating which? In my experience, they feel more like the future is creating the memory. Like, oh, that happened in the future, so I'm watching it. But it could, because when I looked at that, I would not have looked up at that screen and thought I want to go to college there. I didn't know where it was. It wasn't appealing to me. I didn't like running indoors. Why would I have thought I'm going to go to college there? But I remembered the look of it. I remembered being there. And later, actually, I didn't run there, but I went there with my art class, which was my favorite class at Harvard. And after I got through it, I became a teaching fellow for it. And it's the only job I've ever deeply loved. And we went to that indoor track and did a drawing of that space, which is very difficult to draw. So I really looked at that space. But then I've had things where I was really, like once I went to, I was drawing an illustration for a children's book, and I wanted a picture of an elephant that was going to step on a rabbit, but reared up in time to stop. And I wanted it from the rabbit's point of view. And then I went to the circus where they had an elephant that was standing there. And I got down as close as I could to it. And I got it down on the ground and I pictured what would it look like as it reared up. And as I intensely pictured it, the elephant reared up, he went into the exact pose, 1 foot up, trunk up, eyes down, ears out. And he held it for like a minute. And I grabbed a sketchbook and drew it as fast as I could. He was clearly responding to what I was thinking, but I don't think that was remembering the future. I don't know. I think that felt like I thought it, and so it happened. But the Harvard track thing felt like I drew it in the future, so I remembered seeing it when I was 15. When I was 15, I remembered seeing it when I was 17.
Yeah.
This is all becoming extraordinarily confusing, as all discussions of time travel invariably do.
Yeah. I feel a lot of feelings.
I'm remembering
things left, right, and center.
I'm remembering dinner next Monday. It's amazing. All right,
one more question. Trish says, is experiencing this when we're awake different from pre-remembering in dreams?
I'm so glad that you said this, Trisha, and since you're a brilliant poet, you probably know this. In Tibetan Buddhism, they really, really encourage, like monks and others and nuns and other meditators, to try to go to sleep without losing awareness, which is not easy to do. I've never done it. But you watch your body. Actually, I do watch myself begin to dream now. I can feel this heaviness in my body and a certain sensation. And then the dream begins before I actually feel like I'm asleep. And then I generally disappear into the dream. But what they say in Tibetan Buddhism is to stay conscious in the dream. It's called lucid dreaming. And there are numbers of ways to do it. You can get books on it, read about it online. We don't have time to do it right now, but you can do it by suggesting when you're awake that you want it to happen. When you're lucid in the dream, that is, you know it's a dream. You can then say, oh, I'm dreaming, so I might as well like jump to the top of the Empire State Building or climb it with mittens on in a cold day. You can do anything in a dream. But then when you wake up without losing the awareness that everything you see exists only in your conscious perception and is therefore, in a sense, yours, just like a dream. And this is not considered figurative. It is literal. I was just reading about it this morning in a book called The Joy of Living by Mingyur Rinpoche. It talks about quantum mechanics is really describing this foam of matter in which nothing is stable and consciousness is creating. So when you get to the point where you can know that it's a dream when you're dreaming and know that it's a dream when you're awake, then you realize that you literally can start to make things happen in the dream. I did this only once. I became lucid in a dream. I said I wanted to talk to Jesus. I tried to go through a wall. I got stuck. My head got stuck in the wall.
I hate it when that happens.
A lot of work to do. A lot of work left to do in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Jesus was in the wall. I'm sure he was. No. Anyway, we're out of time.
There's a lot of questions to open up at the end of the gathering.
I know.
Was Jesus in the wall?
Of course, Jesus was in the wall. He
Jesus
said
was
in the
in the
Gospel of Thomas, he says, pick up a stone and you will find me there. Split a log and you will find me there.
Bash your head into a wall and you'll find me there.
Consciousness is everything, and everything is love, and everything is one. And that's what Jesus said.
Peace out.
Peace out. It's not exactly. Okay, we're leaving for sure. We remember leaving. We remember ending this at some point to give you guys some break. All right, we love you. We'll see you next week.
Remember seeing you next week.
Yeah, remember seeing you next week. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye for now. Bye.